right, everyone, this is Fullshock. We're going to be doing a replay review for our boy Cupcake right here, who is 21 OS. He's the, whatever the color that is, light purple. And he is playing an 8v8 frontline position on Koom Valley. So, real quick, let's talk about Koom as a map itself. First, I'll talk about Koom, then we can look at Cupcake specifically, and then I'll give some just general pointers for advice for his gameplay. So Koom is one of the most common maps played in sort of like the sweat lobby, which is the beginnings of a sweat lobby here. Koom is a 6-2, meaning you've got 6 frontliners and 2 backliners. These 2 positions are more or less interchangeable. One of them is air, one of them is tech. Doesn't matter which one does which. However, what traditionally happens is the air player, for example, if Dolphy was air, he would take these 6 mexes, but the tech player would take these 9. I don't actually know who goes tech and who goes air in this game, but just an example. So this is a map where backline actually has an insane amount of impact, because unlike a map like DSDR, where the backliner is only playing with 6 mexes, is only playing with like 3 mexes and 6 total income, he's playing with 9 mechs, right? Which is like 18 metal a second, which is an insane amount of income for a backliner early game. So that's sort of the backline situation. It's got it's got 6 geos. So it has geos here for both sides, and then it has the cliff, the mid cliff geo. It's sort of an interesting map because these players will fight, these players will fight, mid fights, these players. It's more or less straight. But there are some small nuances in how it's played. The players on these sides obviously have to go bots, and they'll meet in the middle. These players here, because there's a geo, are normally the carry positions, because there's good metal and there's the geo. They get the 3 behind. They can get everything up here, right? There's some 3.5 mexes, so they have a ton of resources and they can utilize the geo. A lot of times the players who are here, if they're good, they can end up with this geo, and they can end up with this geo as they're pushing. So they just have a massive economic advantage. Sometimes, depending on who you're playing with, the backline techer, who I'm going to venture a guess and say is Ryko, will actually come and take the geos for tech, because geos are absolutely incredible for techers. So a lot of times when you're playing this map, if you're in this position like Cupcake is, you just want to ask your backliner, hey, are you going to come up here and are you going to take this geo, or can I have it? It's a game by game basis. So for example, if I'm here and I'm like, oh, the geo's here, but I have someone like Ryko or 8D or MBT, someone who I know is really good at teching and really good at actually utilizing the geo, I'll ask and they'll say, hey, I'm going to take it. And I'll say, go ahead, man. Right. But if it's, someone who isn't quite as sure, if your backliner isn't as confident, it's totally fine for you to take this and then try to carry the game. These mid islands are contested differently in more or less every game. What's common is you'll see the air player actually fly their comm relatively early and hold this. So they'll come here, they'll drop some LLTs, they'll drop some nettles, they'll take this, maybe they, put some stuff up here to kind of shoot down and help the people here. Alternatively, sometimes the player who comes here gets here and builds like an LLT wall, and both players here realize they can't really push. And so instead they'll start fighting up here. Alternatively, there are times where the player who's here comes up and takes these, but these are sort of, it's really hard to say what happens in mid, because it's just sort of different on a game by game basis. The 2 starts in mid are interesting. Most of the other spawns, so the edge spawns are bots because they have to go down. These spawns are vehicles traditionally because it's a smoother ramp and they can kind of fight here. Sometimes they'll go bots because they want to fight the actual hill here. Middle is interesting because it can be bots or vehicles. Something that's great about Koom is that the middle ground right here actually goes up and then goes down. So things like missile trucks, lashers, and whistlers aren't as effective as you would think in middle because they get blocked by LOS and then they can't shoot up and over. So something that's common in higher level matches is you'll actually see thug pushes, thugs with resbots, and they come and they kind of abuse the LOS so that whistlers and other things can't kite them. And then when they get on the high ground, they're shooting down to low ground. So they have bonus rage because they use plasma projectiles. The other last thing, so sorry, there's actually 7 geos. I forgot this one. There's the mid geo. And a lot of times the mid geo ends up being a win harder type thing. But the scariest thing is where one side loses control of middle and the other side can put a Cerberus on it, because a Cerberus on there has absolutely insane range. Well, maybe not that far, but it can hit so much of the front. So a big concern is that if you lose control of the middle hill and they Cerb it, they're able to just chip away at your front line. The other concerning thing is if you lose control of these kind of hills right here, they can put rattlesnakes, which cover a lot of the ground here, or they can LPRC, where they build basilicas and basilisks. And those can either hit the bases here or they can hit the bases there, and it becomes a pretty substantial problem. So that is Koom Valley. It's a 6-2. Tech is super important on this map, and then everyone else's frontline. And let's look at Cupcake. So our boy Cupcake, he's going double mechs into wind. A+, full support. The only thing I might say is with your con drop, you might want to move your comm a little bit forward. You see the inner green line is his build circle. So if you dropped just a little bit farther, this way, both those mexes would be in your build range, and so would your wind, but you'd be closer and you'd have to walk less time to get here. All right. We got both of them here. We're going to come, we're going to take this. Bro, you're going to have to run a marathon to get here. So normally when you forward lab, your forward lab is going to be up here, but you generally want to drop it sooner. The problem with building your lab here this early is that your comm is going to have to meander all the way over here, and you're going to waste precious time at the start, which means you won't have the units and you won't quite have the same economy as other people. There's very little benefit to building everything up here. Just drop your wind here and then drop your lab here. One of your goals early game is to minimize the amount of walking your commander does, because that lets you utilize his BP, which is the best BP in the game, essentially the best mobile BP in the game, like as efficiently as possible. So in a dream world, your commander drops, you go mechs, mechs, wind, mechs, wind, 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 lab. And your commander doesn't move, because if that happens, it means that you've completely maximized it. The way you've done it here is there's going to be a lot of travel time, and even though it seems minor, where it's like, oh, I'm only losing whatever 3 seconds to walk here, that starts to add up, right? So right now it's 36. You're going to start walking. Okay. It took you like 13 seconds, right? We were at 36, now we're at 49. It took you 13 seconds to walk here. Your opponent already has 2 solars and has started to build his lab. So just to give you an idea, that's why it's really important to maximize your start so that you don't end up in this situation, because all the very minute details of early builds are cumulative, and then you start to get farther and farther behind. So in this situation, just put your lab here. Just go wind, 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 right? You don't need the lab this farther forward. That's just not required. Okay. We're at 52. Wind is dropping. Generally speaking, bot labs are less E, right? Bot labs are 1200, vehicle labs are 18. So bot labs you can get away with a lot of times with 3 wind if the wind is high, because you only need like 60, 65. Vehicle labs, you pretty much always have to drop 4, sometimes even 5 if the wind isn't amazing. But before you're going to drop a vehicle lab, if the wind is at 8, you really need 4 because you're about to e-stall. Even if you don't e-stall building it, you're going to e-stall when you start actually making stuff and boosting it with your comm. Okay, first unit con A+. I can get behind this. The 10 blitz we're going to talk about. All right, so great micro here, right? You were like, oh, I don't have E. You started building windmills, and then when you did, you went back and boosted this. Awesome. You get out your first comm. To give you an idea of sort of how far behind you are from that start, we can look at Snoopa, right? So Snoopa already has 2 cons out, and he's building more energy already, and you're just a bit behind. And that's not a big deal. That's just a minor sort of efficiency thing at start, right? And minimize the amount of walking that you have to do. First con comes out, and you're going to take these. I think I'm more or less on board with this. It might be better if you actually boost the lab and you make more wind with your commander, but I'm all right with this. The only other thing I would add is make stupidly long queues, right? So he's going to take these, and then you can just drop a ton of wind there, right? You can either do 2 rows or you can space them and do something like that so that you never have to worry about this con again. He's just going to build it all the time. All right. And then we're going to go blitz. Okay. So, I generally would favor rovers over blitz early game. Rovers are faster. Rovers are insanely faster at their 180 speed. Oh, I'm sorry. Blitz are also, or blitz are, what are they? 99 speed. So it's essentially, oh, sorry, they're 168 speed versus 99 speed, but they're substantially faster. So they can actually chase down stuff that's raiding in your back. Blitz definitely can be awesome if you're fighting stuff like grunts and you can close in on them. The issue I have here is that if you look, 1 blitz is 900 energy and you're about to e-stall, and the rovers are a lot cheaper. So a lot of times it's great because you can just get out like 1 or 2 rovers and you can scout, or you can fight off the ticks that are coming. And then with your commander, you can keep dropping, you know, whatever you want. But blitz are going to have a hard time trying to chase ticks. Oh no. No, you need, oh, okay. So the midline for your lane is like right here. Basically, it's kind of a weird midline, and normally Zyka will kind of cover that. So you're really just covering this. I don't think you actually need to worry about getting there as quickly. It's much more important to kill the stuff in the back of your base, because this 1 tick can kill, like, he can kill everything here, right? In a dream world, your air player okay. In a dream world, your air player bought a con and gave a transport and has shurikens and comes up here and just stops this, and this isn't a big deal. But you have to play the game you're given, right? There's no perfect worlds here. So in that case, you really need these blitz back here. Okay. You really want at least one of your blitz back here fighting off all of these ticks. Also, this blitz just did 0 damage and basically got 100 to 0'd by a grunt because the grunt outranges it slightly. So just try to be a little bit more aware. And this is one of the things, right? Like, you have all these blitz up here, but you're losing stuff in back. You don't need these up here right away, right? I think if you want to do that, you would want to have your blitz maybe patrolling like this or something, but having a up here doesn't really deny anything, because if the commander comes here, he can just degun stuff anyway, and you want to try to stop raids and other things like that. Alternatively, you probably want 1 blitz back here saving you from the ticks that are ruining everyone's day. All right, so you come back with your calm. You're going to build that. Kind of on board with this. So you queued up 10 blitz, and I think that's really damaging to your economy. Keep in mind that vehicle labs have, well, all the starting labs have 100 BP, right? That's not really that much BP. So you normally need to boost them with either cons, traditionally cons, and then eventually construction turrets, right? Nanos. You also boost it with your commander, but by building all of these blitz, you're super all in. You're not getting more constructors, and you need more constructors, right? You need constructors to come up here and start building energy. You need constructors to come here, take these mexes, and then build energy. You need constructors to take the geo. You need constructors to come up with your commander and help take mexes, build a jammer, right? Maybe you need an HLT like a Manta. But by committing so much just into blitz, you're sort of hamstringing yourself because you're not going to have the build power and the constructors to do everything you need to do. Second, in terms of arm vehicle units, when you look at them, right? Rovers are scouts, so they're raiders, they have great vision, right? You can do things like bait Janus shots with them, bait Artie shots with them, but they're not a frontline unit. Blitz are kind of the same thing. Blitz are really fast, but they're fragile. They have great DPS, but they don't win in a straight up fight, right? If there's a bunch of LLTs here, which there are going to be eventually, I'm sure, the Blitz don't really do that much. Past the first few minutes, unless you're on something like Flats and Forests, which has a really wide lane, you don't need to make Blitz. If you think about like your lane, this is your lane. Look at how narrow this lane is, right? You don't need the mobility of Blitz because you're not going to need to react to raids, and it's highly unlikely you're going to be able to raid, right? Like, you can't really raid up here. There's going to be a commander. If you try to go here, he's here, right? He's here. He's here. There's so little raiding opportunity, and you're going to be trying to raid uphill if you go that way. So Blitz aren't a great situation here. I would probably go, the easiest thing to do at least would be to go like double Janus and do a bunch of whistlers, right? Do like one Janus to 4 whistlers, or you can just open like double Janus, 5 whistlers, and then do like 5-1 or something. But making Blitz now, you need more cons, which you don't have, and then the Blitz aren't really going to be useful when you're fighting. You want to make that transition into alternative units sooner. All right, and our column is coming to the front. I like this. I still would be boosting. Always think, like, just as a mental check, before you send your commander to the front, do you have a lot of metal? Because your commander has awesome BP, and the vast majority of the time, it makes sense to put him on your lab and just burn through all your metal really quickly. Even if they aren't the greatest units, right? Like, you can literally just go to your front and just be like, give me 2 stouts, right? And you build 2 stouts really quickly, and then you send your commander to front. But not utilizing all of your starting resources and your commander's BP is going to end up putting you behind. And that's not what you want. This goes back a little bit to like having more cons, but you aren't scaling your energy economy at all, and it's a little brutal. So I think you have the lowest, you have the lowest energy econ. Granted, you know, the wind isn't amazing here, but like you're at 91 and everyone else is above 100. He went full solar, so he's at 221, but you really want to, you know, once you take these, you need this guy queued up to start building a ton of, I actually wouldn't go wind, I'd probably go solar, but wait, we can talk about that really quick. So Koom is kind of a weird wind map. If you're core, I would say you almost never go wind because it just kind of isn't amazing, because you just, I mean, you like can go solar with a few wind and then you just go asolar. For arm, it's a little weird because average wind is 8, I think. Yeah, average wind is 8. And so it's decent, but max wind is only 10. So it's better for you to spam wind at the start, but then you kind of just want to transition into advanced solars because wind aren't that great. And there's tons of maps where, you know, wind above 12.6 average wind. So when wind is at 12.6 or higher, it's more metal efficient than advanced fusions, which means that there are tons of maps where, like, if you have a lot of room, you literally can just spam wind everywhere. And even though you're still building advanced fusions, you build the wind because it's more metal efficient. On Koom, it isn't. So on Koom, your energy is a little bit tighter because you kind of want to build wind until you're at like 200 to 300, and then you want to drop advanced solars normally. Your lane is a little different because you've got this guy right here. This happy creature. Yay! To take a geo, generally speaking, you want at least 200 energy and you want an E storage. And the reason why is because if you try to take it with like your commander and a con, you'll E stall traditionally at 200 energy. But a geo is only 13,000 E, I think. Hold on. Let me double check so I'm not lying to you. Yeah, 13,000. There we go. And e-storage is 6,000, which is essentially half of it. So having that early e-storage at like 5 minutes and then going into geo will let you take that geo relatively early. And that'll kind of solve the majority of your early game T1 energy problems. But we're not scaling energy economy at all right now, in part because you got raided, which I understand, but just kind of talking about it. And we're sending our blitz. Where are our blitz going? So you made these blitz and they just kind of died in mid, and then they probably all got reclaimed. If you're going to make these starting units, try not to have them die as quickly. Granted, you got raided and everyone APM stalls, right? So they probably died when you were getting attacked here. That happens to us all. All right, another con coming out. So awesome. So you recognize you need more cons. You just did it in reverse, right? You made all the blitzes and then you made the cons. Don't do that. Just try to mix them in together a little bit more, right? So you can go like one con, say 4 rovers, and then another con, and then maybe 1 blitz, and then another con, and then 2 Janus, and then another con, and then some whistlers. You don't need to have it be quite so cut and dry as this, where you're like 1 con, 10 blitz, 3 cons, blah, 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 right? Just mix it up, right? That's the great part about bar, is that you can sort of just select whatever you want. So you can just go like, oh yeah, you know, let's go con, let's go a couple rovers, let's go con, let's go double Janus, let's go con, let's go, you know, and then you can kind of do it like that. You don't need it to be quite so segmented, and you want to sort of differentiate it. The early VCons are awesome as well because they're 10 energy a second. And for you, when you're struggling for energy, right? Like you're not even at 100 energy. Your 2 vehicle cons give you 20 energy a second, which is massive at this. If you didn't have them, you would be completely e-stalled out. So that's another reason why you want to mix cons in early with these builds so that you can kind of smooth out your energy production. All right, and I'd say you need to dump this metal and you need to go to front. Having your commander back here is super risky because you need your commander on the front to make LLTs and to de-gun like big pushes. All right, you're going to take both of these. You're going to get raided again. Oh no. So this is one of the other kind of situations where it's nice if your commander is on the front, because right now your commander's slow, right? If your commander was on the front and you had like 3 LLTs here, Snoopa couldn't really push, or it'd be harder for him to push. And that means that you can pull your blitz back and your blitz can help defend. But your blitzer on the front line and your commander's in the base. And so your incredibly slow commander is going to have to try to chase ticks around, right? And your blitz are going to try to have to hold the front. And a commander chasing ticks is about as effective as like a small girl herding cats, right? The commander's like, hey, come back here. And they're like, nope. So it's super, super hard. Early con turret. I would just, you don't need this early con turret, bro. Just drop more vehicle cons. Vehicle cons, super dope. All right. I will also say this is not entirely your fault. Normally, when you have a competent air player, right, you can just ping him and you can just be like, hey, bro, maybe don't drop a bunch of pings. And he will have shurikens, right? He will have blade wings, these little bad boys right here. And as the ticks come up, he will respond because he's got awesome map awareness, and he'll be like, da-da, and he'll just stop all these. That didn't happen in this game, but you know, that's how it goes. That's life. All right. Super important. In a situation like this, where you're getting raided and there's like one tick that's going to kill a mech, but it can kill more stuff, you need to detonate this mechs. If you, on grid, it's Control B, on default, it's Control D, I think. If you detonate this mechs, it'll explode and it'll kill the tick. And even though you lose the mechs, you're going to lose the mechs anyway, right? But when the mechs explodes, it'll kill the tick because it'll do the bonus damage and it'll have a bigger range. So whenever you're in this situation where it's killing it, as soon as the tick gets close, hit Control B, pop it, and then you're good to go. Also, both these ticks are super low. If you just take this guy and you click on the tick and you draw the thing, he'll reclaim these. This tick has 8 health. This tick has 9 health. The con would literally come up and just be like, slurp, slurp. It'd be some There Will Be Blood type shit where he's like, I drink your milkshake, I drink it up. But you're gonna be like, I drink your tick, I drink it up. And then you're safe. And then you can rebuild all of these, right? Reiko's gonna be a homie and come try to support you. Oh, ooh. Kuchi and Snoopa trading comms. Oh no, Kuchi and Jadam trading comms. What? Okay. A lot of comm trades happening, a lot of comm. Okay, so really quick, take a note where all of your frontline commanders are, right? Here's Big, he's on the front. Here's Contra, he's on the front. Here's Neza, he's on the front. Here was Zyka, he's on the front, right? Kuchi was on the front, but your commander's back here. If you ever aren't sure, if you're like, hey, should I send my commander up to the front yet or not? You can always just look at your team, right? Everyone in this game is higher TS than you, which means on average, they're probably just more aware of the game state and potentially just better. So if everyone else's comm is like walking forward and your comm still in base, you really want to think about moving your comm forward, because right now you only have a couple blitz trying to hold back Snoopa. If your commander's here, you can spam LLTs and it'll be harder for him to push. If there's like a bunch of stouts or something that come, you can degun them. But the super concerning thing is that because you don't have LLTs locking down this, you open up everyone on your team to really scary raids. If Snoopa sees this and he has raiding units, and like, let's say your blitz are here, right? You only have 3 blitz. He can just raid like this, right? And he's going to run through here. He's going to get this max. He can kill a Whistler with like a couple grunts. He doesn't need that much to kill an LLT. But if he gets here, he can kill that. He can kill those. He can go for your air player. He can do, right? He can do all sorts of stuff. So it's really important for you early to get your comm up to the front and set the front with your allies. Because if you don't set the front for your allies, everything is raidable, right? And even if you think about it here, right? Like if Snoopa pushes here and your comm isn't in the front, and he goes like this, your comm's gonna have to chase. In this situation, you're trying to rebuild mexes, which I understand, but still, you need your comm on the front. Also, when you're running, if you're concerned about that, if you would have just dropped one LLT right here, right? One LLT right here completely shuts down that tick play. You could have just built it as you were moving out if you were worried about it. But instead, you've been raided twice by ticks. Again, your air player in a perfect world would have just brought over 4 shurikens and completely shut it down. They would have killed like one mechs and it wouldn't have mattered. But you got to kind of adapt to where you are. All right, we're going to start building LLTs. I would just build these a little bit forward. A lot of times LLTs don't actually stop anything, but they just slow them down. So instead of putting him here, if you know that there's kind of circles here, just like build them here, so that if he tries to LLT creep forward, your LLTs will shoot. Building him this far back's a little bit sketch, because by the time he comes up, he can kill your LLTs. And like if he has arty, he can just start killing your mexes anyway, which is concerning. All right. And we got, what else? So you still have a bunch of blitz. And another thing is, ideally you want to like scout these radar dots. Granted, he is a jammer here because there was a bunch of stuff over here and then it disappeared. But let's look. Oh, he doesn't even have a jammer. Everything just left. So you aren't applying pressure to your lane, right? You have these blitz, and blitz can't really apply pressure, right? If these were whistlers, the whistlers can just chip away at this, but blitz can't really apply pressure and you can't really raid. There's nowhere for you to sort of, maybe you could run around like this, but it's harder to know. Because you aren't pressuring Snoopa's just going to another lane, right? And so he's going to contest the metal here, and that's a problem for your team. And that's one of the reasons why, instead of having these blitz, which are raiding units, if you have stuff like Janice or Stouts or Whistlers or even just a couple of Shell Shockers, you can start killing this. And when you start chipping away at this, Snoopa's army is going to have to react, because if it doesn't react, you're going to kill his pork here and you're going to start killing LLTs, and then you're going to have the ability to raid his lane. But because you aren't applying pressure to his lane, Snoopa is going to come up here and he is going to potentially get a massive, 2,500 metal, depending on whether or not he can take it, or whether, Neza might degun it, but still, we always want to try to be applying pressure in our lane. And we're swapping to Whistler now. Awesome. So, and 4-1, perfect. It's just that you needed to do this way, way sooner, right? It's almost 6 minutes and you don't have anything out here that's really threatening the front line. And so Snoopa feels free to roam. So you have the idea that's actually a good ratio, which I fully support. It's just that you built the blitzes before, and that's not what we want to do. All right. I already talked about moving your commander forward. Next thing, it's almost 6 minutes. Generally speaking, around 5 minutes, I'll always build an energy storage. For frontline play, it's super awesome because your commander, if he's cloaked, it's 100 energy if he's standing still, but it's 1,000 energy if he's moving. So if you don't have an energy storage, you can cloak for 1 second. If you do have an energy storage, you can cloak for 7 seconds. And let me just say, the difference between 1 second of cloak and 7 seconds of cloak is routinely game winning, because it means if you have a jammer, you can walk your commander up and then you can fire D guns and win. Or if you're trying to get your commander to safety, if he disappears for 1 second, it's irrelevant. If he disappears for 7 seconds, he can get to safety. The other important part is that D-guns are 500 energy. So if you look at the very bottom one, it says Disintegrator and then cost 500 E, right? If you don't have E like you do right now, and you don't have any storage, you can't D-gun. So if your commander's on front and you get dive, you just can't kill anything because you're D-gunned. And units that fire lasers like LLTs require 20 energy a shot. The little lightning bolt above their head tells you that, oh, by the way, I don't have E to fire. And that's another reason why you just want storage. You need storage. But we're making whistlers. I'm on board. Sign me up. Also, we really want to take this Geo. Okay. Calm goes down in the lane above you. And I recommend almost everyone to just buy a transport from your air player because it's awesome for situations like this. But whenever a comm goes down anywhere near you, you want to immediately run up and try to get it, especially if it's a comm trade like this, right? A comm trade like this is a minimum of 2,000 metal. Kuchi is Neza. He just renamed like the other Neza just as a joke. But when I say Kuchi, I'm talking about this player. Kuchi actually can probably secure this because he has BP and stuff here and he's trying to do it, but it's always good if you can help. If you have LLTs here and you have an army here that's pressuring that, it means that you're free to come up here and either eat all this metal or, you know, secure the metal for someone else, like for Kuchi. Or if you see a huge army coming and your commander's here, like if you fly your commander in and then you look and you're like, oh my God, I can't fight what's coming, you can just degun the wrecks. You can just go boom, boom, and then wreck 1, you dead. Wreck 2, you dead, because degun doesn't leave a body. So you can just degun the wrecks and then run away. And then instead of them getting 2,500 metal, they get 0. So people lose comms, but there's no benefit. Alternatively, if you can get here and eat both those, your team is way ahead. All right. So we got some whistlers. Even when you only have like one whistler, you can start chipping. So these blitz aren't really doing too much. If you just have them up here, right, you can just hit F with your whistlers and go like this. Just hit F and drag a line. They'll move forward and they'll attack at the max range that they can with their LOS. Whistlers are awesome early because they have the best LOS out of any T1 vehicle lab unit. So if you look at something like a Blitz, right, a Blitz has 300 LOS, which is line of sight. A Whistler has 620, which is amazing because it can see farther than it can shoot. So if you just hit F and you just like draw the line, they'll come up and they'll just start chipping away at everything. And you can also just even do like an F like this, and then they'll move. And as soon as they see, they'll start shooting. And then you just need your blitz in front of them to kind of protect them, or your blitz around them. Okay. Commander to the front, please. Here, your E is so bad, I wouldn't even build converters. Your team's overflowing a bit into you and stuff, but you don't, like, when we're looking right here, your E converter is firing, and you're building another converter, which is a lot of energy. 185 is the energy you're making. 541 is the energy you're consuming. So if you're like, oh, do I need converters, and you're building all this stuff, just look here. You're burning through way more energy than you're producing, and wind is at max. You cannot even support these converters. The only reason that you have energy right now is because everyone else on your team, or a lot of other people on your team, are accessing. But that isn't going to happen forever. And people kind of panic about like, oh my God, we're wasting energy. Honestly, early game, wasting energy is not that big of a problem. Wasting metal, definitely an issue. Wasting E, especially early, is not that big of a deal. Your comm doesn't need to be doing this. Your comm needs to be on the front, or he needs to be boosting this geo. Okay. Two things. One, all these units have just been sitting here doing nothing forever, right? They have no experience, they have no kills, they've done nothing. If you're gonna make units, don't idle them, right? These units need to come up here and they need to just pew, 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 right? Having them sitting here, these units haven't, like, maybe they've scared Snoopa a little bit, but Snoopa's been fighting in mid for the vast majority of this. He's fighting other people. You literally could have spent the 15,000 metal and just gone T2 because these units haven't done anything, right? Granted, you don't want to do that. You want to make these units and you want to be aggressive with them. But you don't need a critical mass of whistlers. Even just one whistler can come up here and he can start shooting. And if there's an army here and it runs at him, you need to run back to the LLTs. Big point with whistlers is that they're slow, they're fragile, and they have god-awful DPS. The one thing they're good at is they track and they don't miss, right? Well, tracking and missing is the same thing, but they're consistent DPS and they have good range. So normally when you're playing with whistlers, you want your commander on the front, And similar to this, you want an LLT forest, but you want your LLTs to kind of like go like this and come forward. And then your whistlers can move through your LLT forest. They can start shooting. And then if the enemy responds with tanks or grunts or whatever, your whistlers can run back. Well, really your whistlers will want to do kind of like an arc to preserve momentum, but they kind of do this and then they can shoot. And then if they get attacked, the LLTs defend. If your whistlers are ever, and your Janus too, if your whistlers and Janus are ever like caught out here by grunts, they just die because they have no defenses. You need LLTs or other stuff with them. All right. All right, it's 7 minutes. It's almost 8 minutes. Whenever you're playing frontline on a role map and you have a techer, between like 6 and 8 minutes, you need to look at your techer and you need to go, is he tier 2? Yes. Then you need to go to him, and I don't have the button because I'm a spectator, but you need to give him 400 and for core 470 metal, and you need to say, hey, I want T2, right? For arm, I think it's 430. For core, it's 470, but you want to get T2 as soon as possible because then you want this guy to come here and start upgrading all of this stuff. Oh, you guys double built that Reiko build one, so that's not really your fault. But yeah, get it as soon as possible. That's another reason why a transport is nice. If you want to buy a transport early from your air players, you can fly your con to places. A lot of times your tech players should just do that, but it depends. Okay, so we moved up. Huge, and you started chipping. So look, there's nothing here. You could have done this a while ago. Right? You don't need this massive army. You could have been pushing this whole time. You've just kind of been chilling instead. I would also say in situations where there's like a comm like this, I mean, granted there's this stuff there, but I think it's like 5 Janus shots will snipe a comm. If you can move your Janus up and get a couple shots off on his comm before anything else comes, it's massive because then you can just chip it down and kill it. But perfect. This is what you should be doing. You just should have been doing it a little bit sooner. You're coming up, taking mexes. I'm on board. You just need your commander forward. Also, if your commander was here, you could kind of like come up and do like build high ground LLTs and stuff here. Let's see what's up here. So you probably actually, yeah, if your commander was on the front, you could have come up here and you probably could have built like a couple high ground LLTs and just secure this. And then that also would have let you have these mexes, which would have given you from 20 to 24, which would have been, you know, a 20% metal increase, which is awesome. The other thing I'll say is that you're massing wind, which I said is a good idea early on, but you need to diversify with solar because it's not a great wind map. If we look at your team, right, like Reiko is at 560, Kuchi's at 230, right? All these people, 500, 300. Zyka's at 180 and you're at 145. Again, you're the lowest E on your team, in part because the wind is low and because you didn't diversify. You don't have solars. If you had solars or advanced solars, right, you'd be in a better situation. And you can totally spam wind, that's fine, but you want to have wind. Once you have like enough wind, well, first I would diversify between wind and solars a bit. Actually, for arm, I lied. You can just spam wind, even though it's slightly more BP inefficient. But after a bit, you want to start dropping some advanced solars. And then once you're at like 200 to 300, you can take this geo if you aren't building a bunch of other stuff and you have e-storage. Yeah, so we really need T2. And you're going to start pushing. Awesome. So we're doing good here. This is what you needed to do sooner, right? These blitz still haven't really done anything, but they're tanking a little bit for the Whistler ball. Okay. This is scary. Like I said before, Whistlers need like an LLT forest or a commander to retreat into. If you don't have that, it's terrifying because like a bunch of stouts or grunts can just run at these and they're all going to die because Whistlers are so incredibly fragile. So you're pushing forward. Oh, a couple things. All right. You're pushing forward, which I'm all about aggression, but you want to be intelligent with your aggression, right? You want to reclaim all of this, even though there's not that much. There's still, say, whatever, 300. Well, I guess it's up low. Yeah, say 370. And you want to take these mexes and you want to put down more LLTs and stuff. By just pushing forward with Whistlers and Blitz, it's super risky because if you get dove and they counter, you're going to sacrifice this entire army, right? This is 2,500 metal. If this dies, that's a pretty substantial issue. All right, good. You're going to come up and take this max and you're going to hold here. This is the dream. I thought you were going to keep going, so good play. 4-1, and you've got some cons in as well. Perfect. Really need T2. In this situation where you're e-stalling essentially, but you have a bunch of metal, you can just drop solars. Okay. Commander should be at the front, like we said before, but why would you want to build wind here? If we look in the back line here, right, this is like wild and free. When you look at this, you should see like the Lion King, right? There's like elephants and giraffes and stuff like making noise in the background. Look at all this wild, untamed land. This is a great place to just build a bunch of wind that isn't threatened. Right here is super threatened. One of the best, like if you lose your lane, one of the best defensive chokes is right here because the enemy is going to be pushing high ground. Building wind here means that if this army dies, they can just come up and kill your wind. Or if the enemy takes hill and they put like a rattlesnake right here, the rattle's just going to go pew, pew. Well, it'll kill your geo first, but then it'll go pew, pew, and it'll just kill all this. You almost never want to build a massive chunk of frontline energy like this. Just have your con build it in back, and you already have a con building stuff in back here. So if you're worried about it, if you want like more wind building quicker, you can just build a nano here, transport it to the middle, or have this guy build a nano and then build wind all around it, right? And then he'll be building and the nano is assisting the whole time. But you don't want your commander spamming wind like on the front or near the front, because that's just, it's so risky. There's no reason to take this risk when you can just have no risk and build it in back. With that said, there are times where like you're totally e-stalled and your commander's on the front and you'll drop like some solar panels. And then later you can reclaim them because solars cost no energy, so you get 100% of the building back. But I wouldn't do this. You're also floating an insane amount of metal. When you have this much metal and you can't spend it because you're e-stalled or for whatever reason, I would normally say just send it to the best player on your team or send it to your techer. In this situation, Raiko is both. And if you see at it, he's got like no metal. So sending him a bunch of your metal will actually boost him quite a bit because he's in the process of trying to upgrade everything else. All right, we got some aggression. I am on board. Good job. You're pushing your lane. You're doing everything you can. Oh no. All right, so if you got in here and dropped down another radar and maybe some LLTs, you probably would have seen the radar dot from Snoopa's Con. One other really important thing to note here is that Snoopa had units in middle, right? But now you're pushing and there's only a commander. That's scary because it tells you one of two things. Either he's raiding somewhere else or he's teching and ecoing. So if we look at him, he's hiding his army a little bit farther back, but he isn't spending as much metal because he's upgrading his mexes. So whenever you're fighting on the front and suddenly there aren't units, you need to think about what are the alternatives, right? A lot of times it's like on a lane map like this, it's like, oh, he's probably teching, he's probably ecoing or something like that. Sometimes on like a roll map, it's like, if he doesn't have units, he might be bombing, he might be teching, he might be doing whatever, right? But you want to be aware of that. If there's only the calm here, you really want to try to push the advantage, but you also want to think, if you see this, it might be a good time to drop just a couple small like nettles or anti-air in your base, and you want to think about how to punish a tech like this. So this is what I talked about, right? If there are LLTs here, these whistlers don't die, but there aren't. And so you're losing 3 whistlers and you're probably going to lose more because the whistlers are slow and they can just get run down and they don't have the damage to kill anything else. If you're oh, wow. Okay. That was a little lucky that you were able to snipe that and kill this, but you're going to lose all these whistlers and he has res bots. He's just going to eat all of this. If your comm was front, you could have had more LLTs, you could have degunned this stuff, and you could have eaten this comm if it died. Instead, you're going to sacrifice, I think, all of these, and he's going to get a ton of metal. This is a situation where Whistlers are great at chipping at the front line and breaking LLTs and other stuff, but once the front is open, like there's no more LLTs, and there's not even a commander here anymore. Just go straight stout. You don't need Janus, you don't need anything else. Just go straight stout, because you want your stouts to push through this gap and go kill Eco or go kill Snoopa or do whatever. You can definitely have a couple Whistlers because you want the anti-air for Shuris, but generally speaking, once the front line is broken and once you're past like 8 to 10 minutes, the best thing to do is just literally remove everything else, Q1 stout, hit repeat, and just send the tanks. All right, and what are we doing back here? So, what? So Raiko gave you a T2 con, and it's coming to up all of these. So if you're in a situation where you have more E than you know what to do with and more metal than you know what to do with, it means that you need more BP. So you probably want to drop like 1 to 2 more nanos here. I also would have multiple cons boosting this, because you want to get T2 mexes up as soon as possible. Whenever you get a T2 con, your first thing should be like, how do I upgrade my first like 3 mexes or so? Sometimes your commander will be there and he can boost, but your commander should be up here. So you just want to pull like 2 to 3 cons and just put them there. Alternatively, if you do have an air transport, you can pick up a nano, fly the nano and drop it right here, and then the nano can boost, and then once the con goes here, you pick up the nano again, you can drop it here and it goes boost. All right. And all right, your comm is on front now. You're gonna drop this. Because you're not getting pressured, I would also say this is a great situation for you to just go T2. Just drop down more nanos and just go T2. You cannot be spamming Whistlers this early into the game, or this late into the game. At like 13 minutes, Whistlers kind of lose effectiveness. I'd say like between like 8 and 9 or something. You just want to go straight stout at this point, or you want to eat this lab and just go T2, which is what I would say is a better plan. I'm gonna speed this up a little bit. So now you're going to be fighting into Quakers, which are T2, and they can just shred all of this, which is one of the reasons why Whistlers aren't quite as strong. So that's why you want to go T2. I'd say at this point, I'll probably just stop this replay. We could talk about it a little bit more, but for me, the biggest things are your early kind of BP allocation, and then scaling your E, and then your unit choice early on, right? You went con, 10 blitz, con. We don't want to do that. Go like con, a couple rovers, con, maybe a blitz or 2, con, Whistlers or something like that. And then you want to use those and actually, you know, push forward. And then you weren't aggressive at all, right? If your commander's on the front and if you have Whistlers on the front, you can just shoot and chip and do all sorts of stuff, but you weren't able to. So I'd say for your next few games, think about trying to be more aggressive and think about really maximizing your early build. Try to get more cons and try to use the units to just be more aggressive. With that said, 5 minutes, E storage, we'll just say 7 minutes, try to buy a T2. Your T2 was super late. Raiko just gave it to you, but you had the metal the whole time to give it to him. And then you want to boost it. Radar on the front. I feel like you didn't have enough radar, but focus on kind of refining your early game more. And then we can talk about transition and a few more things. You could have transitioned to T2 earlier if your economy was in a better state, but just because it wasn't, it's kind of hard to talk about that transition because the timing is a little weird. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you have other questions, post them in the Discord thread, and good luck in your games.